This one comes from the Deathbaits, aka Gary, in response to recurring Roland MX1 questions, a video I did in November 2021. And he writes, "Hello John, mate. Hope you're good. Hope you're doing a great service to the ARIA users with these videos, mate. It really highlights the fact there is so much more information that Roland are simply not putting out there." Yeah, tell me about it. A mate of mine who was a programmer for a major record label back in the 80s told me that Roland used to issue a poster for people to put up in the studios, which stated that their user manuals were very limited on the purposes they wanted to encourage people to delve into the machines and work everything out for themselves. Maybe that was okay in the 80s if you were working with a TR-606, but I think your videos prove that it doesn't quite translate to today. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Roland manuals of the past were, you had to have a degree in reading Roland, I think, to be able to understand some of the logic. I mean, the information is kind of all there, but it's just not written in a way that actually makes it legible to people when they actually get the machine. And now I can remember being in a recording studio many years ago, and the keyboard player having a sense of humour failure, because what he was trying to make the keyboard do, he could not remember the sequence of buttons and pushes that made it go into some weird mode. And I can't remember what it was. And one of the engineers rang somebody at Roland UK and asked them could they get this sequence for them, and they rang them back with a sequence of steps, and they plugged it into this keyboard, and all of a sudden this keyboard went into this weird mode that this player was trying to get it into. But he was actually, he's ranting and swearing at this keyboard because it wasn't doing what he wanted. And as I say, the only way we could, it wasn't in the manual. This sequence wasn't in the manual. We went and got a manual. We actually went down to one of the local record music shops and asked them if we could actually look at the manual for that particular keyboard, for the demo keyboard. So they had effectively had the machine out on demo. So that box was open. So they went in the back and got the manual. We poured over this manual. We couldn't find it. So we ended up ringing Roland, or this tech ended up ringing Roland, shall I say? But that's reality. That's what used to happen, because the guys who programmed this thing had a completely different way of thinking about the guys who used it. And that's one of the biggest problems with a lot of legacy synths, is the people who programmed them and the people who used them had a different view on how the synth was going to be used. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. This next one comes from Sean Curran, long-term commentator on the channel. And it's in response to why the System-8 is not a Surface, a video I did in December 2021. And Sean writes, in fact there's so many reasons why it's not a Surface, but the video covers most of them. But Sean writes, "Hi John, does the System-8 transmit MIDI control values by default without remapping the sliders and knobs? Could you remap a VST to respond to System-8 transmitted MIDI control number, and therefore you could control the Jupiter Juno patches on the System-8 with your VST? Otherwise, I agree, System-8 is too fantastic and expensive to leave the synth engine unused or lose the ability to tweak the sounds." You make a couple of decent comments there, Sean. The first thing I say is the System-8 does allow for control values, and yes, you can remap those to the DAW. The thread was specifically focused on the DAW environment and where I stand, and I stand by my comment. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why would you remap DAW controls to the System-8 and use it as a Surface? Yes, use it to control an instrument, but not as a Surface. I'll be fair and say the controls on the System-8 can be mapped to Roland VSTs, e.g. the versions of the Juno and the Jupiter, etc. and now the JD800, which is also available on. No, it's not. It's not available on the System-8. That's a Jupiter X. Sorry, apologies. JD800, Jupiter X. But the Juno and the Jupiter, you can definitely map the controls, and that's already kind of done for you anyway. But in the event, the way that the controls are overlaid is not intuitive, and that's kind of where I was coming from. Is if you're going to have a surface, the surface needs to be intuitive, and the System-8 is not intuitive. The problem is the System-8, from that perspective, is trying to replicate the features from the modelled synth without necessarily having the knobs and faders on the machine to allow you to do it. You saw me in the video having to refer to a cheat sheet, as some of the controls were not a one-to-one mapping between the modelled synth and the Jupiter 8 keyboard layout. But the System-8 is a good synth in its own right, and this is kind of the important point about this. Is not only can you load up different Roland models in terms of what the synth is capable of doing, the Jupiter 8 is actually a good multi-oscillator synth in its own right. And that was kind of the point I was trying to make, is why are you buying the System-8 if you want to run a Surface? Go and buy a Surface to run a Surface. There are better controllers out there dedicated to be Surface controllers than the System-8 is. Use the System-8 for what the System-8 was designed to do. It's a synthesizer, and it's a modular synthesizer that maps Juno, Jupiter, sound engine into that box. That's what the System-8 is. It is not a Surface. And that's the reason why I said it is not a Surface, because I honestly do not believe that you would want to, spend all that money on a System-8 and it didn't do what you wanted to do. Whereas you can go and buy a really good Surface controller for, let's say, in UK pounds, £300 to £400. You can get an excellent DAW controller. And there are various ones out there for the various different platforms. The Ableton is a completely different concept to, say, Logic. But you can buy a DAW controller for your platform that will do a far better job than the System-8 does.